there's nothing that is wasted, and the reason it's not wasted is because it's all for His glory. There's absolutely no waste in obedience. It's this idea that you're just giving everything to God, and you're saying, God, everything is yours. And it's yours to use in however way you want to use it, whether it be our bodies, whether it be our financial resources, whether it be our words. Man, when we use it for the glory of God, that's no waste there. I want to take you this morning to Matthew chapter 28, verse 18, and I want to show you just in one of the last commands, if not the last command of Christ, and what He said really matters, and especially in light of this morning and some of the stories we're going to hear a little bit later. So go to Matthew chapter 28, verse 18. And this is Jesus talking. Jesus came and told His disciples, I have been given all authority. How much authority? Oh, like every ounce of authority has been given to Jesus. All of authority to do what? It says, all of authority in heaven and on earth. He says, all the authority that is possible to give to someone, Jesus has. And His authority extends all the way to heaven and all the way here into our earth. He has all authority in heaven and on earth. And I want to ask you a favor this morning, and that is to be completely honest with yourself this morning and being open to the possibility that although you hear the statement that He has all authority, then maybe some of us believe it here in our heads, but maybe we don't really believe it in our practice, right? That in here in our minds, it makes sense. Oh, He's got all authority. Of course He's got all authority in heaven and on earth. And we believe it intellectually, right? We hear, we're like, yeah, I get it. But when it comes to actually practicing that statement, the fact that He has authority over you and me, us, that He owns us, that He is our master, that sometimes, if we're honest, we just don't live that way, do we? We live as if though we have no authority. And authority is the whole idea. It's this idea that when Jesus says, I want you to do something, we do it. And we're not like, oh, Jesus, why should I do it? But rather, if He has all authority, we do it because we're under His authority. And we're surrendered to Him. And we go as people that have a new master, and that master is Jesus. And so we go under His authority, under His leadership. I want you to imagine for just a moment of your boss, for those of you who have a job, that your boss says, I want you to do this, and you were to say, I don't feel like it. Like, I know it needs to get done. Maybe somebody else would do it. Wouldn't that just be insane? For you would feel like, man, I am really stretching the boundaries here of, what the boss, how he's going to respond, right? And we understand this principle of authority in the natural. We understand it because we see it either in the school, if you have a teacher, an authority. If you're a teacher, the principal is your authority. If you're at work, your boss is the authority. If you're the owner of the company, God is your authority, or your shareholders are your authority. I mean, we understand it in the natural, but when it comes to Jesus, sometimes we don't treat Him as our authority, as a person that really has exclusive authority over our lives. We treat Him more like, this is my bestie, right? He's my best friend, and sometimes he always tell me to do stuff, and mostly he would do it. And so it continues in verse 19. So we know that Jesus says, I have all authority over everyone and everything. And then in verse 19 he says, Therefore, since I have all authority, since I own everything, since everything is mine, and I have authority over everything, therefore, go and make disciples. That's the command there. Go and make disciples. And then He qualifies it by the extent of it. And He says, where? Of all the nations. Of all the nations. So He doesn't say, because I have authority and because I am your master and I lead you, I want you to make disciples in your city only or in your county only. But rather, He says, I want you to make disciples of all the nations. Of all the nations. And I hear phrases, and I've been, guilty of this as well. I hear phrases that say, shouldn't we start at home? Like this idea of going to Peru and the Amazon, that's all great and well, but shouldn't we start at home? And I think we use those phrases is because somehow it defrays the responsibility or the burden of the responsibility of the global mission of God. Does that make sense? We use the phrase, well, let's start at home, right? And you hear from a lot of people, like the conversation I had yesterday. Oh, what a waste, was his response. And it's like, wait a minute, that's just a phrase that we're using because we don't want to feel the burden of the great commission that Jesus has given us, which is unto the nations. And yes, we work at home and we do tons of stuff here at home, and that's where I'm just really proud of the work that you are doing here as we impact the kids that are here through Norma's house or we do evangelism through Backyard Bible Clubs. We are participating in the Great Commission here at home. But we also cannot be neglectful of the Great Commission abroad. Because to neglect that is to really disobey God. And we tend to look at God's commands oftentimes as suggestions. Right? We look at a command from God, and it seems like he's really explicit. He's really clear. He says, go make disciples of what? All the nations. We're like, oh, man, let's just take it as a suggestion. Or some churches might even say, man, we're too small to really do that and to go and stretch our limits and go impact people that are far from God in a far nation. And it's like, no, you're never too small to go global. You're never too small to go global. And in verse 19, continuing, it shares, Jesus shares how to make disciples. And he says, baptizing, the first participle here, baptizing, how are you going to do it? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Number 2, teaching these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And this is the promise that follows. When you go and you make disciples, when you stand up and you say, I'm going to follow the command of Christ at home and also abroad, there's a promise that comes to you. There's a guarantee that he's going to say, you can take this one to the bank. There's something unique that's going to happen when you follow my commands. Teaching people to obey all my commands. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So where there is obedience to God, there is the presence of God too. And that's what Jesus is saying. He said, when you obey me, when you do what I've asked you to do, that I've commanded you to do, you're also going to experience the very presence that I have to give you in a very unique way. When we go out into extend our borders here in our city like we're doing this year and going to Nixon, Shiner, Wilder, Harwood, and here in our city of Gonzales to impact people for Jesus, guess what happens? His very presence is with us. When we go overseas, His presence is with us. You're never more assured of His presence in your life than when you're actually obeying what He's called you to do. And oftentimes we miss out. We miss out because we're not living out His command of the Great Commission. Obedience to God is never a waste. It's always fruitful. It's always to the glory of God. And we always find satisfaction in that. This morning I want to show you a video of what's to come this summer. I know you've been seeing these videos, but I'm going to show you another one, and then I'm going to ask our Peru team to come up here and share their stories of what they saw God do in the Amazon.